Okay, here we are with Selim Tilly?
Yep, Selim Tlili. It's a tough name.
Talili. It is Talili. That's a cool name though.
Thank you.
Yes. And the reason your uh, posts and your reels caught my eye was because of just the level of excellence that you're trying to achieve by doing something just a little bit different. And it's not, we always think that you're going to be excellent if you know more information. Just know more facts so you can put it on those lines, and then you're going to be good. You're going to be right on. You're going to be smart. And then here, no, it's sketching. What? And it doesn't even have to be accurate. It doesn't have to be meticulous. It's not like something you're going to sell. And I just like, what is this? So that's what stopped me. That's very, very curious. So tell homeschooling moms, what got you sketching? Why did you start sketching? Have
Uh,
you always been a sketcher?
oh God, no. Uh, I could not sketch a stick figure well until I hit 40. Uh, I actually had began sketching because I took a job at a Waldorf school, and when I interviewed there, they said, this is a big part of our culture, and I did tell them in the interview, this is not a thing that I know how to do. Uh, and they said, that's okay, we'll teach you. And so I sat in on my first class and I thought, you know what? Whatever. This is going to be like a typical PD where I do it, smile and nod, and then I just get through it, and then I get to do what I'm good at, which at the time was delivering PowerPoints and like giving a whole lot of information where
Yes.
my PowerPoint deck was on point. I had all the keywords underlined and I had a video connected to each word. Like it was a well-oiled machine. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I took my first drawing class and I realized, oh, this is different. This is something that's going to change my life. In 3 hours, three single sessions, I I discovered how to take a reality that was out there and express it as clearly as I knew how to. And as I was doing it, I discovered things. I was just drawing fruit and I discovered things. I discovered the nuances of the color of the fruit. I saw how the color would sort of reflect off the table. There was so much there that I didn't see until I spent time looking at it. And that's really fundamentally what science is looking at
Oh,
things as best as you can.
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I didn't see until I was looking at it. Yes. Yes, yes. So how did you not judge your sketches?
uh, when I get to that point, I will let you know.
Okay.
The truth is, I think, and I'm going to put a lot of the blame on this on school. I think school does uh, make you naturally be self-critical because we're so used to evaluating ourselves with a number
Yes.
or a letter.
Yes.
And so what winds up happening, I think, is we grade ourselves. I grade myself every day uh, because that's what I grew up with. And so
Mm-hmm.
even though I know that's not a good thing to do, I say this is a C minus drawing. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, and every single drawing that I ever do is something that I hate until I don't. And this is something that's sort of wonderful about judgment. Your negative judgment comes out hard and furious, but then a day or two after, then your rational mind starts to look at it again. And all those things that you hated, you're like, well, I don't know why I hated that.
That is true. I've experienced that. I know what you're talking about. Yes, yes. Like or you I'm a musician, so I'll
Uh,
play piece of music and I'm just like, "Oh, that was just awful. Oh, I can't believe it." And then you hear it like 2 weeks later and you're like, "What was so bad about that?"
yeah. if you don't mind my, that's an interesting tangent. I'd heard, and I don't know if this is true, that after we started recording like music, um, things got like pieces would get technically better, like compositions would get technically better, but then the players would actually hate it more, and then there would be less variation to it because it's the beginning of that standardization.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, we're chronic assessors. And that's what I ran into. Like, I'm going through your book. I'm going to show this for everybody, and it's backwards. I realize it. But this is his book that he wrote. It's that thick. And then there's pages in there as you're going through that says, now draw a picture of a turtle. And so I draw the picture of a turtle, and I'm just so judgmental. And I'm thinking, poor homeschooling mom, how how can we improve this, or how do we get past the constant assessing of ourselves,
Mhm.
because we pass that on to our kids, not intentionally, but we're passing that on to our kids. So if we're teaching our kids through sketching, teaching them to notice, that's what we want them to do, is to notice things that they didn't notice before. And if we're trying to teach that, but yet we're constantly assessing ourselves, we're teaching that
Yes.
unintentionally. So that's why I want to know how you broke through.
Well, so what I do for myself, and this is what I do with my students, so the rubric that I've given them is, I tell them, if Da Vinci were in my class but he didn't write what he noticed, he wouldn't get a good grade. And likewise, if Shakespeare were in my class and he
Okay.
wrote the most elegant descriptions but he didn't draw, he also wouldn't get a good grade. The purpose of the drawing is to force the crystallization of what your subconscious is noticing. So your brain, like if I have in my book, I talk about how I have four students around a plant, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all
Mm-hmm.
sketching the plant, and they're noticing different things, and they're noticing it at different angles, and so they're noticing the truth from their perspective, and
Mm-hmm.
the the grade, because I have to give a grade, is fundamentally is not about the quality of the drawing so much as what does the act of drawing elicit from you. So
Ah,
uh, the highest level that I give on this is when I see that a student has graded, excuse me, sketched something that is not a symbolic representation of reality, but their best attempt at capturing reality.
mm,
So if they just draw, if they're drawing, let's say, a bunch of cells from a microscope slide, and they just draw a bunch of circles real fast, well, no, I know that that's not reality because every cell is not exactly circular shape. They're slightly different sizes, and
mm,
I need to see the intent of trying to capture that reality. How
ah.
perfectly you capture it is not the important part. It's the attempt to capture it perfectly, or
Oh,
to
okay.
capture it as accurately as you can. So
Yeah.
I attempted accuracy, uh, overall neatness, and then this like so Kane is my rubric. Complete, like everything has been done. Accuracy to the extent that you can be accurate, neatness to the extent that I can read what you're doing, and then the uh, embodied thinking is fundamentally the last part, meaning like have you demonstrated some that you've noticed something that was not immediately obvious to you.
Right.
If you can give me those things, if there's some aha moment in there for you, then you've done the job.
Yeah. Can I ask how
Yeah.
long, like, is this a learning curve? Like, how long does this take? Because this is a definitely a mind shift. That you're going to sketch, my sketches are ugly, they don't look anything like it, and your sibling laughs at what you're a turtle,
Yeah.
and so you're not wanting to do it, you're focusing more on trying to make the turtle look like you think it should look like,
Mhm.
instead of noticing things about the turtle. So this is something that will have to be practiced until your brain lets go of what it should look like and
Yep.
instead lets you get to the place where you are noticing things. And how long is that about?
It's a good question. I think that it's up to every individual to the extent that they resist this. So
Yeah,
typically, what I see with my students, I teach middle school, and what I see is that the first 2 to 3 weeks, there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of eye rolling and teeth
yeah.
sucking, and oh, we're drawing again. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but once they've uh, gotten into their head that this is going to be a regular thing, this can't be like a once a month thing. Otherwise, it's
Mm-hmm.
never going to be. It's just like writing, like, oh, we're writing again. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I've had students who have resisted it for 6 months, but most students only 2 to 3 weeks before they are done with the resistance, and then they're just getting into it, and they're no longer as self-conscious.
Yeah. Okay. To
Even the kids
yeah.
who resist it for that long, though, they do eventually like. I'm not going to say that they all love this stuff, but they
Yeah.
do start to once they get there that aha moment, which
Mm-hmm.
every student I've ever had has had some aha moment where like they've noticed something that they didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is incredibly important, I think, particularly for this current generation who's so used to looking at things for a tenth of a second as they
Mm-hmm.
scroll on the phone. Uh, we have your brain captures a tremendous amount of information. Like let's say 80% of reality, your brain can see in a tenth of a second. But that
Mm-hmm.
other 20% that your brain doesn't immediately register, that filters out, might take 20 minutes of looking. And the practice of looking at something for 20 minutes is difficult. You ever notice when you're talking with someone how hard it is to look at them in the face for more than 5 seconds? We're not
Mm-hmm.
used to deeply looking at something. It's uncomfortable. And
Right.
we know even when like if we know someone's deeply looking at us, we get self-conscious.
Yes.
It's such a practice that we're not used to.
Yes. Yes. In the book, you talk about that people are all the same. We all want basically the same thing. We're just humans.
Yeah.
And that by slowing down enough to pause and look at things with the intent of noticing what you didn't notice,
Yeah.
that levels up your excellence.
That's better said than I could have articulated
Oh,
it.
I was going to say expound on that and say it more clear than I
Yeah, I
did.
absolutely can. So I think one of the things that, I mean, collectively in this day and age, we are in such a rush to uh, solve or come to a
Yes,
conclusion,
yes.
uh,
But
diagnose,
wait, the right conclusion.
yes, the right conclusion.
The right conclusion.
There's such a rush to get to the finish line of whatever it is that we're looking at,
Yes.
that we are not paying attention to the details along that journey. And that is a challenge for all of us. I'm certainly guilty of it. We are constantly wanting to say why this is the case or what made
Mm-hmm.
this happen. Uh, and so we're but in order to do that, what that requires us to do is to assume that everything is sort of the same. So, for example, this is why I talk about this idea of symbolic representation.
Okay.
Every plant is unique, just as every human is unique. I couldn't just draw a circle and two dots and a smile and say that's me. There's uniqueness to me. Um, the act of finding the uniqueness in whatever we're looking at puts us in a state eventually where we're fully in the moment. It's meditative in that sense.
True. That is true.
I mean, I've drawn soda bottles and gotten immersed in the details. The calligraphy of the signature of the brand has there's there's magic in the mundane if you're willing to pay close attention to what's in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And noticing that's what when we homeschool, that is our goal, is to teach our kids to notice what they
Mhm.
didn't notice before.
Yeah.
One thing I encourage my clients to do is teach your kids how to gather data
Mhm.
and put it out, graph it out, or
Yeah.
put it out in a way that's understandable. But you can't gather data if you're not noticing. You have to notice to gather the data. And so parents get a lot of resistance from their kids because they have to tell them what to. And I was like, yes, this this is what will teach how to notice things. And it's indirect.
Yeah.
It could be direct. If depending on what you're studying, not if you're studying the weather maybe, but
Mhm.
if you're just a young, say third, fourth, fifth grader,
Mhm.
and you are gathering data on, say, the different mosses
Mhm.
that grow on the
Beautiful.
trees. Yeah, where I live, at the base of a tree will have 5 different moss
Mhm.
because of how the sun hits it. Now you'll say, oh, they're all green. That's the same. It's not. If you picked it up and looked at each of those little, I
Yeah.
don't even know, I call them mosses, but that's
Yeah.
probably not correct. You will see they are different, and it's different because of how much light and dark and wind and cold, etc., get on that tree. But if you, by having the kids sketch that rather than just collect it,
Mhm.
that's that's just brilliant.
Thank you.
So that's what I'm excited about is um, the science curriculums don't need to come with a microscope, although that's good, that's wonderful. It doesn't need to come with a chemistry set, although I'm not bashing it. If you just teach your kids to notice things.
Yep. Yes. The noticing, paying attention inevitably excites the curiosity. So I
Yeah.
love your example of moss. I think moss is absolutely fascinating. Bryophytes are incredible. As you look at them, they're not specialized. They don't have lots of different specialized tissue. They
Mm-hmm.
are absorbing water, and the water is passing through it through diffusion.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is every different type of moss is unique and it's going to interact with the environment uniquely. And as
Mm-hmm.
you're paying attention to that, you will inevitably come up with questions like, okay, is this kind of moss absorbing water faster than this one? Is this one drying out faster than the other one? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
what would happen if I added, if I soaked it in water? Uh, the questions that you come up with,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you can then go research them and look them up, but it offers a natural opportunity for a student to investigate and then
Yes.
share what they
Yes.
have discovered because that's what science is, where it's observing reality as objectively as we're capable and then
Mm-hmm.
sharing that as clearly as we know how to. If you do those two things, strip the technical terms, strip the formulas, strip the algorithms, you are doing science.
Yes, yes. And the 4 pillars of learning, play, creativity, exploration, and innovation. Exploration, that's what this is. That's just you're asking questions. You're just what would if? What would happen? And by using either the data you collect or what you are noticing, this is just wonderful. But to me, it doesn't stop at science. That's like really easy to see it in science. But if you just noticed how an author put sentences together to where you're like, that's my favorite author. Why? It's not because of the topic. It's why do you like how those sentences flow together?
Yeah.
What is it about that? And, or it's say music and why do you like that composer? Or what does this song do for you that that song didn't do for you? Notice the hand motions or it isn't just the loudness or the fastness, but notice all the other things. That's what music is. And we could go on to every single subject. Um, Math, notice the patterns. If you notice the patterns of these numbers and you notice what this influences and that influences, like all kinds of things start to open up for you. If we teach our kids by giving them facts and you put those facts on the paper. It's one dimensional. Maybe that's what it is. And then this sketching is not one dimensional because, like you said, you shadow and you notice how the light plays off of it, and then it becomes three-dimensional, all the things that you've learned just because you're making a true representation of it.
Yeah,
That's excellent learning.
yeah, it is excellent learning. Uh, it makes your learning so visible to other people. Uh, when if someone writes up a report, it's really hard to tell, did they actually learn anything, or are they just really good at spitting back the appropriate vocabulary?
Yes.
You cannot fake uh, paying attention.
No, that's correct. You cannot fake that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
I love what
And
you said about this idea of like paying attention to why we like certain kinds of writing. Most of the time, so this is, I think, really important idea, and this is why I think that science is far more creative than schools have given permission.
yes.
So you are unique. The collective, your life experience has molded you in a way that you are going to pay attention to things that matter to you. You might not know why you are drawn to something, but you are drawn to something in a way that someone else looking at the same thing is not drawn to it the same way. This
Yes.
is why five people can look at the same thing and will notice five different aspects of it. One kid drawing might be really enamored with the leaves. One kid might be really enamored with the roots or the stem, and they're each uh, examining, and their their gifts, their intuition is honing in on one aspect. And by having all of you draw and express what you notice, you can't help but learn, desire, you actually start to desire to learn the vocabulary, because it's the vocabulary then starts to serve your ability to express yourself as opposed to something that's just there for a test. And you can't help but teach other people. When I was
Yes.
just the expert in front of the board, and sometimes I do have to be, but when I'm the expert, I don't learn a whole lot from the kids. But when we're all observing something, they can be the expert because they will notice things that I just won't notice.
Yes. That's excellent. Yeah, that's right. You know, when I love trees, but I love tree bark. I think tree bark is so beautiful. That's why I noticed the moss because it was on the tree bark. But I can describe bark to you from all the trees, but I don't know what the leaves look like. And but when you said people will see different things, I was like, yeah. And I don't tell people that I love bark because it would be such a strange thing to say. Like, oh, look at the beautiful tree bark. It's just so odd. So I don't say such things, but I suggest it to mothers, like go out and take samples of tree bark or take the paper and have the kids go like this with a crayon on the tree bark and then
Yeah.
notice the tree bark, and it doesn't get taken up very well. But I
They
just
think it's
see that,
childish, and that's unfortunate.
or that nobody else has just noticed that. Like it
That's,
might be the shape of the leaf or the size of the tree or the fruit that it bears
yeah,
is what's important. To me, it was just like, yeah, but tell me about the bark.
yeah.
I don't know why that's
I
fascinating.
know, no, it is fascinating. And what you're actually, this is, you're honing in on something really important. So I don't, I could never teach a student, I could never help a student become a foremost authority on genetics. That's too big, too broad.
Yeah.
I can help a kid become a foremost authority on the tree on their block. And so if
Yes.
they spend an hour looking at the tree on their block, uh, and then they really get in depth in it, looking at the bark, maybe collecting samples, sketching it, feeling its roughness, they could be maybe one of the world's greatest authorities on that particular tree. Probably they would know more about it than 99.9% of the world. And
Hmm.
that does give a student a moment to be incredibly excited about their discoveries and want to share it. This past year,
Yeah,
I had 5 students tell me they're interviewing for high school,
yeah.
going to their the admissions
Hmm.
people, and they all talked about their project where they had to become the authority on a tree on their block. So, I don't know how much they'll remember about the Krebs cycle, but I know that they will never forget, uh, the maple on their block, or they'll never forget the cherry tree, or the ash, whatever. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
But what else, what it does is it gives a level, it gives you a standard, gives the kids a standard of excellence. It just raises the bar,
yep,
and everything else can raise to that standard.
yep,
But when we have broad information and a bunch of right notes, right words that
yep,
we're trying to plop, there's not a standard of discovery or a standard of noticing
yep,
or a standard of knowing that that is like if we that's how I with music is that you are so good at that song. And you said something earlier that they don't really like to sketch at the beginning, but they'll sketch so much that they get past it. And isn't almost learning anything like that? It is in music. Like
yep,
play it till you love it.
yep.
That's what you do. You just play it till you love it. And sooner or later you're going to love it because it's so easy. It's effortless and you're like, yeah, I'm so good. And so, yeah.
Yeah,
So, go ahead.
I think for a lot of the students, at least for my students, what's sort of happening is, if they're already an A student, they already have figured out the system, and then I'm asking
Yes.
them to go past the system, and so they're like,
Yes.
I can just take a test. I'm really good at
Yes.
like eliminating multiple choice wrong answers. So why can't I just continue to do what I'm good at as opposed to expand my skills? So that's why it's my A students that tend to be the ones who resist it the most, because they've already kind of
Ah.
figured out how to get the accolades, the external validation that school can offer.
Yes.
So I find it's the kids who have struggled in that system that the two extremes tend to be the most resistant. It's the kids who, you know, the 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 kid who's wanted to get the A but has not quite figured it out. They're the ones who are like all about this. They're the ones who discover, a couple of years ago, I had 4 students tell me in various iterations, I used to think I was too dumb for science, but I really discovered that I'm actually really good at noticing things. And they would
Hmm.
ask me to take, if I'd never had students ask me, is it okay if I take my lab journal home for the weekend so that I can continue to draw and write?
Uh-huh.
Like, sure, just don't
Wow.
forget it. And so
Yeah.
they would just independently do science, and then they'd be eager to show me what they had discovered.
Yes. Yes. Do you find that, and this is not a it's not a fault, it's just the way we are. We game systems. That's just
Yep,
what we are. We
yep,
just do.
yep.
And I don't know if it's because a computer showed up or not, but if
Don't
there's
get me started.
it doesn't matter what the learning method is or what the computer program is, we will game it.
Yep,
And we cannot resist, even if they pass a law, we'll game the law.
yep,
We game every single system that
yep,
comes up in front of us. But when you start sketching and trying to notice things, you are stopped dead in your tracks with the gaming business.
yep.
You cannot game that system.
Nope. You cannot game it. And you're absolutely right. And I do think, I've been teaching, this is my 22nd year. So I've had the 3 generations where I had the pre-smartphone, uh, pre-COVID. So this is my third generation of students. And what I'd seen is, as the technology has increased and it's become more and more prevalent, there's more of that gamification. So I was still
Yes.
part of that group that, like, I was that teacher that brought in the VCR I wheeled it in the beginning. Uh, And then, then it was showing stuff on YouTube, and then it's learning management systems. And the more technology, the more it gets gamed, where like,
Yes.
oh, I've got an 89. Well, but according to your rubric, this should be XYZ, and you should give me a 91.
Hmm.
And so the more we attempt to fine tune and make the grading and the validation of your knowledge more and more precise, the more incentive they have to uh, engage in academic theater as opposed to a genuine attempt at exploration.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. So with homeschooling moms, I
Mhm.
didn't say on this call yet, but I'm a homeschooling mom coach
Yeah,
because I homeschooled my kids and trial by fire. Boy, I tell you,
yeah,
we didn't have such thing as, well, we started to get internet when my oldest was 7. And so it was a rough go of it for a while. Um, with homeschooling only because we live so far remote and so far removed. And I am a certified public school teacher, and so I tried to do it that way. And that's what makes it difficult. And I like this book is not only is it good to teach moms how to use sketching in teaching their kids how to notice things. Because most homeschooling moms are homeschooling because they want their kids to do better or be higher achievers than they were in the public school. They took them out of there to homeschool them because they think they can offer something better.
absolutely.
Yes. So with sketching, that is something that will elevate everything, but not just sketching. Like, I don't want to say, moms, just make them
No,
sketch everything. I want to specifically encourage them to read your book because the way you talk about human behavior and just so gently and humorously, just the way we are and how noticing things, just how it builds us up and
yep,
how it adds to our learning and stretches us in ways that we didn't anticipate.
yep,
That's what this book does. And I've underlined so many passages in it. And I just think it's an excellent book. And not just, I know it says science, it says sketching for science.
yeah,
But I was like, oh, this is just excellent for literature. This would be
yes,
excellent if you wanted to teach photography, if
yes,
you were teaching your kids swimming. Oh, for Pete's
yeah.
sake. Like, just notice so many things. Or, yeah, anyway, I could go on and on with that. I'll
I
stop.
think any place where uh, exp making things as clear as you can for yourself is important, then it will be valuable. One of the things I've taught history as well. I had kids sketch Washington crossing the Potomac, not like trying to get super in depth, but it's such a famous, important image. And one of the things that one of the kids had noticed, and I had never noticed it, even though I'd seen the image hundreds of times. All of the people in it are wearing different kinds of hats, which makes sense because they're all from different places. They're not all they're not all looking in the exact same direction, but they're looking in the same general direction. Like one might be facing a little bit this way, a little bit that way. And he asked me, well, what does this mean? And I was like, you tell me. And he said, like, maybe it's just that they're all from different places, but they're all trying to get to the same destination. I was like, and what is that? He's like, well, independent. I was like, I'd never noticed that. And because I looked at it, when you go to a museum, you look at for something for 3
Yes.
seconds, but he noticed something, and in sharing his discovery, he enriched me.
Yes. Yes.
We
That's
enrich each other
wonderful.
when we share our discoveries.
We do. We do. That's wonderful. Yeah. And when you homeschool, you are learning alongside your kids.
Absolutely.
You are learning alongside them. And you're learning as much as they are, if not more.
Yeah, the children are, uh, when they immerse themselves, because their curiosity is still so inherent, it hasn't been completely uh, driven out of them despite school's best efforts. And
Yeah.
so uh, that drive leads to a willingness to engage and to experiment and to ask questions and to all I'm really trying to do is harness that natural tendency a little bit by saying, okay, well, let's remember a couple of things. In science, for example, form follows function, meaning that it's probably not an accident that something looks the way it does.
Mm-hmm.
How something looks probably helps that organism to survive or to reproduce. And if we can, then that's where we generate hypotheses. Okay, well, how might these stripes help this creature to survive? Uh, why might the cells be shaped this way? Why might
Mm-hmm.
the organelles inside of the cell be shaped this way? Why might the genes be shaped this way? The form, if we can pay close attention to the form and we can describe the form geometrically, okay, this is triangular shape. Well, why is that important? Uh, it's rough, it's thick. When we can start ascribing details to the form,
Yeah.
then we can start to hypothesize about the function, and that's science. We're saying, okay, this might be related to this. We're making connections like that, and you don't need a lot of fancy vocabulary to do that.
No, you don't. And you don't need a lot of information coming at you to do that either. It's just a natural thing for kids to do.
Yeah,
Yeah. They will just be curious because that's what kids are.
yeah,
They're built to learn. They're
they
curious.
are built to learn, and you know, I still love teaching. But I do recognize the flaws of the system. As you said, I see so many kids that think of school as a stepping stone to the next level. Middle
Yeah.
school is a stepping stone. It's something you got to do until you to get into the high school. And
Yeah.
then once you get into high school just becomes a stepping stone to get into the college. And then that
That's
becomes to
right.
get into the grad school. And
Yep.
there's a step of, oh, got to get to partner in a law firm. It's this sense that that the present is only about getting to the next step. And so we are training students to and kids and people to not pay attention in the present and only
Yeah.
think of the present as how it helps us get to this next level as opposed to being in the moment.
Yes. Yes. Yes, that is a very good point. And yes, that's what we do. Yeah. Yeah, you articulate that very well in your book. Yes. And that's even more of a reason to slow down and notice and sketch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do not, there are trade-offs to this. Like, let's say, like, I'm not going to cover 300 pages worth of material in a year. And maybe, some of my colleagues might. Uh,
Yeah.
but what I can concretely say, because I sit in on my colleagues, it's like students who cover 300 pages of material in a year, they do that by, you know, uh, absorbing and then spitting out, like
Mm-hmm.
plug and chug and forgetting it minutes after or days after they've taken the test. And so it becomes everything is a race to the test, erase, start afresh,
Yes.
as opposed to this material is connected to this material, which is connected to this material. So I do have students who, in the beginning of the year, we spent a lot of time on trees and on plant structures. And so now, as we're in genetics and in cell structure, all of what they had learned about xylem and phloem and cellulose and all of that material about plants, even the kids who are not the best academically are making connections from stuff that they learned in September to today because visually they have retained this material. I mean, you think about it, like
Yeah. Yeah.
you I'm terrible with remembering names, but you can remember thousands of faces. Like
Mm-hmm.
your brain is visually uh, oriented, but we are using that relatively little. Most of teaching is about what you can hear and try and absorb. And
Yeah.
honestly, hearing actually is the new kid on the block. Uh, that evolved of all of our senses. It evolved the
Okay.
most recently.
Okay.
Yeah, seeing,
Huh.
smelling, tasting, all of that stuff came before. This is the new stuff. This is new technology.
Okay. So I have one more question.
Sure.
Some kids are just born very capable of memorizing
Mhm.
information,
Yeah,
and my youngest daughter was like that. She could hold unbelievable amounts of facts in her
bless
head.
her.
Yeah, but when she got to eighth grade,
Yep.
there's no way she could keep up with the amount of information coming at her, and she didn't know how to use it.
Yep.
Now, I recognized this when she was in fifth grade, and she just didn't know how math numbers, like she knew 6 times 8 was 48, of course, but she didn't know why 6 times 8 was 48,
Hmm.
and she didn't know like how to use that piece of information to figure out 6 times 9 or something else.
Hmm.
It was just, I only know that, but she knew so much. She was so stinking smart.
Yeah.
And she got into eighth grade, and oh my word, did the door slam. So, how, like, I'm thinking of these kids.
Yeah.
If they draw, she would have been a great sketcher. Like, she loves art
Hmm.
and all about it. I'm just wondering how you've seen these kids. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. How do they relate to sketching because they're not holding facts?
Yeah. This is a challenge. The 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 precocious child who is able to absorb a tremendous amount of abstract information has a gift.
They
I
do.
don't ever want to take anything away from that.
No, that
Uh,
is, yeah. Hmm.
I think one of the challenges is that at some point, the demands of society will inevitably, at some point, overwhelm that gift, whether it's in eighth grade,
Yeah,
high school, college, somewhere along the lines.
absolutely.
The fire hose will eventually be stronger than what you can drink.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so, to the extent that a student is willing to work through this, it will serve them. Now, the question is, how do you convince them? I think the way that I have attempted to do this is through the way I evaluate their knowledge. So I don't evaluate their knowledge by asking a whole lot of recall and information retrieval kinds
Mm,
of questions. I I ask novel questions. So we're looking at the cell. Yes, I might have one or two questions like, okay, what is the purpose of the mitochondria and what is the purpose of the Golgi body?
hmm.
But then my next question is, okay, the Golgi body of this cell is not working. What are the implications of that? So instead of just saying, what is the function? Well, what happens? What are the implications of when a part of the system is not working? And so by having drawn the entirety of the cell, they can anchor the information. They can look back at in their
Okay.
mind's eye of the image of the cell, and they can look at the Golgi body and they can say, okay, the Golgi body is related to the endoplasmic reticulum. And so because they have a map in their head,
Yes.
they can understand it as a dynamic system as opposed to being just a bunch of separate systems that they
Y-
have memorized.
yes. Instead of just being sentences that they memorized, they have a picture of it. That makes so much sense.
And they'll
I have
never forget it.
helped I have helped so many parents because their kids cannot answer an open-ended question.
Yep.
Like if we were talking about American history, you ask them questions about the dates and the who's and
Yep.
the times and what they signed, but do not ask an open-ended question because that is not like their brains cannot handle it, which is another reason why I brought this up because I was thinking my daughter wouldn't have been able to handle it either. But if they had a picture of it, that's a whole different ball game. Then they're not. necessarily, it's not a hypothesis off of nothing. They have the anchor in their head, and so they can infer and they can make a
Yeah,
hypothesis off of that. Oh, that's brilliant. That's
yeah,
really helpful.
yeah. They have a visual anchor. They're not starting from blank, and this is a skill in and of itself. Uh, you know, I remember, I've asked questions about plants, and then I asked, okay, well, this bush, something's happening to a bush, and then kids said, that's not fair. You've only talked about plants. You never talked about bushes. I was like, so that extending that lateral transfer is a skill that does need to be explicitly developed.
It
But
is,
I think
yes.
it is the kids who got it right said, I don't know if this is exactly right, but given what I know about flowers and given what I know about these kinds of plants, I would assume that this is what might happen in a bush. So,
Yeah, yeah. But it's that they have a picture in their head. Yes, because and a lot of those kids who I would say are like more concrete learners
mhm,
rather than a holistic learner, they're incremental learners. Um, the safety net or their security blanket is the A,
yeah,
and they don't like to stray far from that or take a risk.
yep,
However, if you had the picture drawn in your head because you paid such close attention as you sketched it,
mhm,
you could do that.
yep,
That would open that door, totally
yes,
open that door.
yes. And
Oh,
it
that's brilliant.
lasts. I
That's
think,
brilliant.
most every kid has had to label, like take a pre-drawn image of the cell and label it.
Hmm.
But drawing it from blank, and you can even tell the kid that's going to be part of the exam, is that
Yeah.
you have to draw the cell from scratch.
Yes.
So there is not a surprise there. This is a thing that they need to do
Yeah.
and be able to do it well, and then be able to operate from that. And then it
Yeah.
becomes its own study guide, because instead of
Yes.
explicitly saying, oh, here's ABC is going to be on the exam, be able to recreate this thing and work from that.
Yeah. That's excellent. That's excellent. I want to share with you one thing before we
Please.
wrap up. My oldest daughter, I taught my kids how to take the Cornell notes. You know,
Mhm.
I think I was almost a drill sergeant with homeschooling. You start at 9 o'clock, and it's like this. Every kid had to have two books being read at the same time. They had to learn two instruments, and don't be a slacker because while you're not practicing, like that makes the whole thing tumble.
Yep.
We've got six instruments that have to be going on. Like, be on it, kids. They were on it. But my oldest daughter went to a lecture, and I told her to take notes. She was going to be doing a presentation on this lecture, and that was the assessment. And she came back, and she had drawn a portrait. She had drawn a picture of the lady who was speaking. It was very good. I didn't know she quite, I didn't know she could do face pictures like that.
Beautiful.
But all of the points of the lecture were in thought bubbles around this lady's head. At first, I was like, this isn't right. You know, I was thinking that. And then I was like, that's brilliant. She's never going to forget that lecture.
So,
She can just pull it back up in her head.
yep.
With now, if you had those Cornell notes, they are looking like all the other Cornell notes that you took on every other subject you took Cornell notes on.
Yeah.
But this lady's lecture was totally unique, connected
Yep.
to her face
Yep.
with thought bubbles around it. Like,
I think our brains,
that's a
we
great idea.
remember, if we can see it and we can feel something about it, then we will retain it. Like, you can remember the first time you got food poisoning because your brain is designed to remember something, like I feel really, really bad when I eat this.
Yeah.
You can also remember, like, this was the most beautiful day of my life. Like, our brains are visual and emotional, and when you draw, you are connecting all of those. So the connection between my hand and my brain is very strong when I draw. When I'm
Yes.
looking at an image, the connection between my eye and the brain is very strong. And then when I have a feeling about it, then the emotional part gets involved. So normally in a lecture, you're only getting one. modality.
Yeah.
Here you're getting a triple threat. It's all, and they're all synergistically reinforcing your
Yes.
long-term retention of the material.
Yes. Yes. That's why handwriting too is so beneficial.
Yeah, it was such
Yes.
a loss to, and
Yes.
I can't prove this, but because I think it goes both ways. So the your the practice enforces the fine motor skills, but the fine motor skills also reinforce the thinking. So I really do think that once uh, cursive was removed from the classrooms, I think that that is why we see a difficulty in Gen Alphas and Gen Z's collective ability to express thoughts clearly.
Ah.
Like, again, this is just a hypothesis,
Yes.
but I
Yeah.
really do think that
Well, you know how you came up with that? You notice things.
try and pay attention. Yep,
You notice. Yes.
yep, I notice the patterns.
Oh, yes. Well, this is wonderful. This has been a very enlightening discussion. This has been so fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And likewise,
Yes.
I learned a lot too, and I'm really grateful to have connected with you.
Yeah. And maybe we'll do this again.
I would love that. I'd love to learn a lot. I have so much respect for homeschooling. It's not a part of my world, but the homeschooling students that I've worked with, I've seen in so many regards they're light years ahead of the kids who have been conditioned to
Yeah.
only focus on uh, external validation.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That's true. Yep. That's true. And some people were talking to me about, but I'm going to be done with homeschooling. It's so soon. It's not long enough. They have so much part of their day, and when you teach your kids to notice things, things can get done more quickly.
Yeah.
Like,
And what also happens is, at least for me, I very rarely, when I notice that I'm getting bored, uh, I just look around me and I find something too that it's like, okay, let me find something that's worthy of my attention. And
yes,
so yes, the day is short, but the opportunities for learning don't end at 1 o'clock.
yes,
They end when I close my eyes.
yes, that's right. And if the day is too short, you're not learning enough music.
Yeah.
Just throw another musical instrument in there. That's all you need. Okay, well, wonderful meeting you, Selim, and talking with
Likewise,
you.
Constance.
And I look forward to carrying on our conversation.
Likewise. Thank you so much for your time. I really
Okay,
appreciate it.
yep. Okay, bye bye.
Take care.